Good morning. Welcome to our December IHE Third Thursday Lunch and Learn. We were just realizing that we are now beginning our fourth year of doing this. So this is absolutely incredible. And each month our programs get better and better. And I know that this month will be no different. I'd like to introduce Katie Larson, who is a English and Holocaust Studies teacher in the Bellevue Public Schools and a dear colleague and friend of IHE. In her, as part of her background bio for you, she created the only Holocaust studies program in the Bellevue Public Schools, and she did this 12 years ago. She has, in the last 4 years, along with many of us educators, attended the Belfour Conference for Educators through the museum in DC, now held completely virtually, so a lot of us can attend, and it's just an amazing program. She has taken students on numerous Holocaust education-related field trips, along with the programs that we provide at IHE, partnering with the Samuel Bach Museum and the museum in DC. Recently, she just spent a few days in the Holocaust by Bullets training program in Denver, which is an amazing educational program. In her spare time, she enjoys traveling, reading, and spending time with her family. We were asking her, or what I had asked her, Jane and I had asked for her to present on a couple things. One is her philosophy of teaching Holocaust education, and also to discuss the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum's Teacher Fellow Program. I was just asking, they only take 15 teachers a year, and she was part of the Fellows Program from last spring, early summer, and over 100 teachers apply each year, and we knew that she'd be accepted, and it's just an honor to have her here today, and so I'm going to put myself on mute and try to begin to share the screen. So you'll tell me if it's working properly, and hopefully it will be. So give me a second, and then I'll put myself on mute. So give me 1 second. Okay. Did that work? Can you see? Great. Okay, so let me put myself on mute and turn it over to Kate.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Hearing Scott introduce me, it's like he's talking about somebody else. I never imagined 12 years ago that I would be on this journey. It is a continual journey. It never stops. There's always something new to do and to learn. And I'm just trying to immerse myself in it as much as possible. So thank you, Scott and Jane and everybody at IHE. They have been absolutely foundational in my journey. About 4 or 5 years ago, I went to my first conference at IHE and I learned about all the things that I still needed to do, and some things I wasn't doing well. And I think that's anybody who wants and desires to be a Holocaust educator, an educator at all. It's super important to give yourself some grace and just to continue to learn and to grow. And so that's the journey that I'm on. As Scott said, I teach for Bellevue Public Schools. I teach at Lewis and Clark Middle School. I'm a 7th grade English and Holocaust Studies teacher. My Holocaust classes are pretty unique in their makeup. When I was hired 12 years ago, current principal, same principal who hired me, he said, "Hey, Katie, I've got this 43-minute class that several teachers get to do, and you just get to teach your passion, so teach whatever you want." And I knew that my passion was Holocaust education and that I would try to find a way to do that. I took some time off and came back to it. And I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Absolutely, great." And for 12 years, he's really supported me in that journey as well. So that's where I'll begin. If you want to hit that next slide, Scott, thank you so much. There we go. So how did I begin? A long time ago, after graduating college, I taught for several years for Omaha Public Schools. And then I took some time off to be a mom. It was just a personal decision and best for my family. But I'd always been interested in the topic of the Holocaust and learning more about it. And so during that time, I actually had some time to take some classes and read and research. And I was typical stay-at-home mom afternoon, and I came across the start of this documentary, and I was spellbound. it is an amazing documentary. It's 20 some years old, but I still show it in my classroom. And I knew that if I got to go back to teaching and I got the chance to be a Holocaust educator, that I would use this. It's appropriate for middle school kids. It has a little bit of a Nebraska connection. Scott and I just discussed, but it is about a small town in Tennessee, and teachers and educators and administrators got together and said, we have a pretty homogeneous group of kids, and it would be a disservice to them to send them out into the world and not recognize diversity and the gift that that can be in their lives. And so they started teaching about the Holocaust as a way to teach about diversity and empathy, and all of those things. And so the kids asked, 6 million, what does that look like? And they were really hooked on that number. And as Scott and I were discussing, it goes much further than just the numbers, which is what Holocaust education is about. It's not just about the numbers, it's about the people. But they collected paper clips from all over the world, and they gained national attention. And journalists came and did stories on them in the documentary. So if you can go next slide, Scott. And so what they did is they searched all over Germany, a couple of journalists, for a rail car of the time, because they wanted to build a permanent memorial on their school grounds for their paper clips and the other things that they had collected. And so this is myself and a teacher named Sandra Roberts in Whitwell, Tennessee. And I went to visit them about 4 years ago. And it was an amazing experience. And what struck me is I emailed her on a Monday, and within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, she emailed me back and said, absolutely, come. And I went on a Friday. And when I got there, they have a beautiful Holocaust education library. It's completely dedicated to Holocaust education and a huge collection of books. And as Scott said to me, and I said, that's what she said to me when I went there, their collection of books comes from a man from Nebraska. I don't know, Scott, if you want to tell the story. You tell that story better than I do, but it was amazing to see.
It was Dr. Ben Nachman of blessed memory, who was a very dear friend of our family, and it's his collection was donated to the museum to there, and so it's just a great way to have his memory be for a blessing.
Yeah. So that was just a really cool experience. And she didn't tell me that until I got there. So that was neat. What I liked about this paperclip project is it began as a collection of things, a collection to represent numbers. But what they really highlighted in the documentary and for the kids is that every paperclip comes with a story. And so they began to tell the stories in the documentary, and that every paperclip doesn't just stand for a number, but it stands for a human being who had a rich and full life before the Holocaust happened. And so that's what touched me about it. Kids learned about not just numbers, but about people. And so one of the things I always say in my classroom is it's not about numbers. It's not about just learning about the events. It's learning about people. And that I'm not a big fan of the word tolerate, but to wholeheartedly embrace and celebrate differences. Tolerate to me seems like put up with, right? And I hopefully I'm teaching the kids in my classroom, using the lessons of the Holocaust, that foundation of how to go out into the world and be better human beings, and to know that you're responsible not only for yourself, but humanity as a whole. And so the lessons of empathy, compassion, respect go hand in hand with that. And I think this documentary with middle school kids really embodied that as well. So that is something I began, that began my idea of what can I do with this when I go back to teaching. So next slide, Scott. One back, there we go. So because I'm an English teacher, I had to find a novel that was doable in a middle school classroom. I also wanted to make sure that it was something that the museum and other Holocaust educators would approve of. And I had to have it be at a reading level. My class is made up of kids who it fits their schedule. It's not elective. They don't get to choose it. It's just kids get literally dumped in there if it fits their schedule. So I really had to find something that would create critical thinking discussions, but that was at a reading level for all kids. And so I use this novel for several reasons. It is historical fiction, which means it's historically accurate account using fictitious characters. So everything that happens in the story happened to somebody, but it's an historical fiction account. I like the fact that in the back of the book, it provides a glossary of terms and a timeline of historical events. So we refer to that often as we read it. It's age appropriate and good for all reading levels. And it's also an exhibit at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in DC. So if we could go to the next slide. So these are just a couple pictures that I took this summer. The exhibit had been closed for a couple of years as they redid it, and it just opened back up recently. And so when I was at the museum in July, I went through and I took a ton of pictures, and the exhibit takes visitors through the novel, and it's appropriate for young kids. And so I took all the pictures, and after we read the novel in my class this year, this semester, I was able to show the kids pictures, and they were very excited about that. I also had kids that weren't with me on the trip, but went this summer and emailed me from there and messaged me from there and said, Mrs. Larson, I'm at the Holocaust Museum and they have Daniel's story. And so it's pretty exciting. It gets kids interested in visiting the museum at some point. So I love that. I love that they redid that. And it's good for young kids because not everything in the museum is for young kids, but this is a way for them to learn about the Holocaust using age appropriate pictures and scenes. So can do the next slide, Scott. Thanks. So as I started in Holocaust education, I didn't always get it right. I did the best I could, but being in conferences and things now, I definitely have learned more. And everything for me is based in historical context and personal stories. Those are what is key in my teaching. I always begin with some background information historically of the time period. So I go through, World War I, the Great Depression, immigration, things like that. And I think that's super important to do because kids have to know what was going on at the time. I teach seventh graders, so I can't, and I don't have the time to go in depth into everything. I mean, I could teach a whole year and still not get to everything, but I do go through that. I go through the history of anti-Semitism, Hitler's rise to power, propaganda, and I also did a lesson this year on Hitler Youth because kids are always asking, where were kids in this? I use the Timeline Project from the museum. That is a beautiful lesson. It goes from 1933 to 1945, and it has cards. And so it builds the timeline of events. It covers the Nuremberg laws. And there's a lot of great discussion that comes out of that. I have my kids do a gallery walk to kind of highlight some of the different things that maybe they had more questions about or touch them more than other things. And they also come with personal cards, stories of people who lived during the time. And so we do a reflection with that. Each of the kids picks a card. They go stand by the timeline where they think that person was most affected, which is really, it could be lots of different dates. And one thing I definitely do is I use a lot of personal diaries and memoirs. Salvage Pages is amazing, and other stories. Just even on the museum website, there are so many resources on the museum website. You could click forever and not see it all. And every class period starts with a human story. So when the kids walk in my room, my lights are off, and there is a person highlighted on my TV, and we start with a human story. And in the beginning, I start with stories that reflect things that are happening in the times and places in the novel that we're reading. And there's no simple answers to complex questions, and I stay away from graphic images. I might show a couple pictures in my first day PowerPoint, but I really, really try to tell the personal story of where people were in their lives and their families and their celebrations, and they went to school, because I think that connects kids to their own lives. And so that's how I start every class period. So these are some things that I try to cover in a semester. I meet with 2 classes and I meet with them every other day. So it's a limited amount of time, but I do what I can in that time that I'm given. So next slide, Scott. So I've taken kids on a couple of different field trips. I've taken them to DC and done the whole DC thing, but the most important piece of that field trip for me is taking them to the Holocaust Museum. There's only so much I can do in a classroom in a semester, and my class used to be a quarter, so I even had a more limited amount of time before this year. But for the kids to see the lessons and the things that we talk about in its entirety is pretty moving. And I don't think I've ever been to the Holocaust Museum with kids where kids were not moved by that and had a lot of questions and a lot of discussion. And that's kind of a culminating event for me. When I have the opportunity to take kids to the museum, there are a lot of kids who will never go there unless I take them. So that to me is just, as an educator, as a Holocaust educator, is one of the most memorable things that I get to do, the most rewarding things that I get to do. Next slide. And we are so lucky in Omaha to have the Institute for Holocaust Education, and they're searching for humanity field trip. I don't know, Scott, how many times have I done this? Probably 5 or 6, maybe.
A lot.
Yeah. And I take 7th graders, and it almost brings me to tears when we get back on the bus because I'm so moved by how mature they are and how engaged they are. And it used to be at the SAC Museum, and now we are so fortunate for the Samuel Bach Museum in Omaha. If you have not been there, that is a place you definitely should visit. But Scott now and Jane get to host those Searching for Humanity field trips at the museum. So not only do the kids get to do the Searching for Humanity field trip, but they get to immerse themselves in Samuel Bach's work. And so it is truly a space for Holocaust education to take place all day long. And there's really no other place in Omaha to make that happen in that way. And like I said, there's a lot of kids who will never make it to DC. So the fact that I can take my kids somewhere here 15 minutes away and they're immersed in Holocaust education for the entire day. And we do the whole field trip lesson in the morning, and then we pause for lunch, and then there's always a speaker. And I think that really hits home for kids too. And this year I plan to process for 15 minutes the next class period, and we process for an entire class period and a period after that. So even though they're 12 and 13, they really are critical thinkers, and they feel and they want to ask questions. And I love that about my students. I love that. And they're 12 and 13, so they're like sponges. They want to learn as much as you want to give them. They want to learn. So next slide. So the second part that Scott asked me to talk about was my fellowship journey. So currently, I am a museum teacher fellow. I like to say candidate. I am not a museum teacher fellow yet. I have to successfully finish my program. And of course, I'm not an employee and I don't speak on their behalf. But I have nothing but positive things to say about my experience. The Belfer Conference is a prerequisite. And this summer will be the 5th time that I attend. I applied in 2020, and we all know what happened in 2020, because they used to do it in person and they would pick 25 educators. And I thought, oh, I'll give it a shot. I was finally at the time in my life where, I could afford to go because it's not paid for. The conference is free, but you have to get there and stay there. And my kids were at an age where I thought I could leave them, I could do this, and I got in, and I was so excited. And then COVID hit. So I was so disappointed. However, now that it is virtual, the last I heard, they reached like 41 countries in all 50 states. Hundreds of thousands of, educators are able to get all of the information. And they always send great resources to you. And it's totally free. And it's 3 days of learning. And there's all kinds of chat rooms. They do it through the WOVA app. So I've been able to connect with Holocaust educators even before I got into the Museum Teacher Fellowship program, I was able to connect with even more Holocaust educators from around the country. They do a great job, and the fact that it reaches so many people is amazing. So this year it's going to be it's always the end of June, so June 24th through the 26th, and I think registration is open now, and it doesn't cost anything to register. So it's a great experience. Next slide. So these next slides I took straight from the website, the USHMM website, because I didn't want to, misrepresent or not say the right words. So they're kind of wordy, but the Museum Teacher Fellowship Program was established in 1996, and it's their effort to ensure quality Holocaust education in schools. And over 430 teachers have become a part of the Corps. And our real purpose is to learn and then to take what we've learned back to our communities. So other educators, the schools that we teach in, professional organizations, and just become kind of an educational outreach and resource around the country. And as Scott said, the application process is quite lengthy. I decided to give it a shot last winter, and the application took me 13 hours. It took me a long time, and I maybe overthought it, but I hit submit and I thought, okay, at least I gave it a try. And then I got an interview. So you have to go through an interview, and that was nerve-wracking. And then I got chosen, and Scott can believe it, but I still can't believe it. It's just been probably one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. Next slide. So you have to be a middle school through 12th grade teacher. And you have to show evidence of Holocaust history. You have to have successful teaching experience, and you have to participate in your community or professional organizations in order to apply. Next one, Scott. And then so we participate 2 summers in a row. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but there it is. And after the first summer, so I did my first summer this past July. And after that, you have things that you have to do. You have to join some professional development through Zoom. I have to do a professional development in my school or in an organization around my city. So I'm doing a professional development in February for my language arts teachers and anybody else on my staff that wants to join in. Right before they teach Anne Frank in the 8th grade. And that's in conjunction with the traveling exhibit through IHE, and the Anne Frank exhibit is coming to our school. So I thought that was a good timing. And we have to evaluate resources. We have to talk about our 6-word rationale. And there's just some assignments and things we have to do with that. And then I get to go back this summer and finish my fellowship. And as soon as I successfully finish that, then I can call myself an MTF, but not yet. I'm not there yet. Next slide. So if anyone is interested, it's middle school and high school teachers, and you can see the range from history to foreign language to English to journalism. And you have to have 5 years of Holocaust education experience, and you have to attend Belfer. So if there are any educators out there in your life that are interested, I can't recommend it enough. It is a great experience. Next slide. So what does it mean for me? In my current job, I always say I feel like I'm on an island, meaning I'm the only one who does what I do to this extent. Not that Holocaust education doesn't occur in other classes. In 8th grade, we teach Anne Frank. In 9th grade, we teach Night. In history classes, they may have a couple of days on it at the most. But I'm the only one who teaches a Holocaust studies class, and that's just because I wanted to. And I just started gathering materials and doing my best, and I'm just trying to build from there. I use a lot of resources from the Holocaust Museum in DC. Like I said before, those resources are endless. Any topic, there's literature, there is articles, there's all kinds of lessons on everything you could think of. But for me, it's allowed me to collaborate with some of the best Holocaust educators in the country. And these are my people right here. This is my, there's 15 of us, but this is my smaller cohort. We text several times a week, and we Zoom once a month just because we miss each other. I just met them in July, and I feel like I've known them my whole life. So I think when you do what we do, you need your people around you to bond and to talk and to collaborate. And so those ladies right there are those are my people. They're wonderful. Next slide. One of the greatest things about being in the fellowship program is being able to immerse myself in the museum for an entire week with other educators. You know, we get to tour the exhibits as much as we want, which if you've ever gone there with 50 kids like I have, it's hard to read everything and corral kids. I went a couple years ago on my own and I spent 6 hours and I could have stayed longer. But it's great to be able to just be there the entire time. We got to meet Holocaust survivors. We got to collaborate with other educators and the museum staff. And I just have access not only to the museum resources, but resources that other educators share. We're constantly, what did you do with this? And how long did it take you? And I only have 3 days. And so just having other people to professionally talk with about what I do has been a real gift. Next slide. So for my Holocaust MTF program, my museum MTF program, I had to come up with a 6-word rationale last spring when I applied. And then I was just asked last month if I would alter it at all. And I think I need all 12 of these words. But here's where I started, and I kind of explained it. So I have some notes. But when I started last spring, it was to encourage empathy, understanding, and responsibility. And this was my original 6-word rationale when I started the fellowship journey almost a year ago. To me, one of the most inspiring things about teaching this history is the change I see in my students as the semester progresses. Through teaching a Holocaust studies class, I witnessed students becoming more empathetic and understanding. However, the most rewarding change I see is the realization that they are truly responsible for not only themselves, but for others and humanity as a whole. We are all connected. If I were to change anything in my 6-word rationale, it would be to include mention of accurate historical context. Although it's a given, teaching historical context with accuracy is at the forefront, as well as teaching it with valid sources and to show the history from the perspective of those who lived it. I feel like I need more than 6 words. But if I were to alter it, it would be something like teaching history with hope of change. I don't know that I'm completely satisfied with that answer. I think I will always change it. I will always alter it. I will always keep going because I'm never going to be completely satisfied, I don't think. But I'll continue myself to push and grow and learn and adapt teaching as needed. You know, each group of kids is different every year, so you have to adapt. One of the things I really like about the museum are the quotes that you see around, and then never stop asking the why. You know, and at 12, they always want to ask why this and why that. And I'm very honest, I can't answer that because there isn't a rational reason. But we should never stop asking because that's the only way to try to prevent a repeat of history. And that is the hope that continues. Next slide. So this is on the left is a picture of me in my fellowship. That was our last day. And as I was going over these slides, I'm noticing more and more how tired I look in that picture. But that is happy exhaustion. That is after 5 days of immersing myself in the fellowship program this summer. And I think that is a picture of one of the happiest moments of my life, that I got to spend a week there. And the picture on the right, those 6 kids in that picture are some of just a handful of many that have come through my classroom. Those kids right there are juniors in high school now, and they still keep in touch. And they still remember my Holocaust class and our trip to DC together. And really, everything that I've learned benefits me, but mostly, and most importantly, it should benefit my kids, because my goal for them is just to be the best versions of themselves, and to go out and do good in the world. Really, that is my goal, and to learn what hatred can do when it goes unchecked. And so we talk about that all the time. I had a kiddo come to me the other day and, Mrs. Larson, your class changed me. And I said, no, it didn't change you. She goes, yeah, I look at people differently, and I'm more understanding. And I think about, you know, why are they having a bad day? What's, not that they're crabby people, but like, what's going on with them? How can I be helpful? And how can I be less judgmental? And I said, you're still the same person you were. You're just a better version of yourself. And I always tell the kids, I try to be a better version of myself every time I teach this class. I get something out of the group of kids that comes through. So that really is my goal, to teach the history and to make a difference. Next slide. So, I think one of the biggest opportunities that I've had is to network with other Holocaust education, people in Holocaust education, educators, directors like what Scott does. But I'm always trying to find opportunities to expand my network. And I really just have to give a shout out to my principal, no matter schedule changes, staff changes, curriculum changes. He is always super supportive. I don't know half the time if he knows what he's saying yes to, but I just go into his office and go, hey, I want to get a new novel. Okay, get what you need. I mean, he's just great. I want to go on this field trip. Okay, great. He's wonderful. And I went to him in the summer. I texted him and I found out about this conference and I said, what do you think? He's like, we'll figure it out. And he let me go. So it was great. This was a Holocaust by Bullets conference in Denver, Colorado. It was sponsored by Yahad and Unum. And then there were an additional 2 days sponsored by the Denver Center for Judaic Studies, Denver University Center for Judaic Studies. And that group are all the MTFs that were there. And some of them are like a class of 2000, 2001. And so to be surrounded by all of them was inspiring. One of the speakers said, don't just seek safe places, seek safe people. And I think that just kind of moved me. That was so important for me to seek people who I can collaborate with and understand what I'm trying to do, because they're trying to do the same. We're all just trying to educate kids and educate ourselves and grow. And I'm super grateful for them, and they inspire me every day. So that's our group that was there. It was pretty great. Next slide. And Scott has my contact information, but if you want to know more about the Belfer Conference or the MTF program, or resources, if you're an educator and don't know where to start, that's okay. I didn't either. And I'm still going. I'm still learning and growing. So I'd love to talk about it. I'm passionate about it. So if you want to know more, let me know.
So thank you very much. We're going to open it up to questions. I have the luxury, because I'm speaking, to ask the first. And what's next? What's next for you? We know that you're going to be a museum fellow, but what's the next thing you would like to learn from or learn at?
Well, I think I'll just always seek out any opportunity. I think if I do finish, I hopefully will finish successfully my MTF program, I think there's ways to get involved. Right now, my mentor in my cohort, I would love to eventually maybe do that, so that I continue to be part of the MTF program. I think it's super important. And she has been just my biggest cheerleader and my biggest support. And so I think I would love to, when I feel like maybe I'm ready for that, I would love to do that. Any conference, any class I can get my hands on, I will go. Honestly, my big concern right now is that my class won't exist someday. And so I really have to remind people often. My principal is retiring this year, and that's a scary thing for me, because he's allowed me to it is not district curriculum. It is not a district class. It's something that he lets me do. And so, it even expanded to a semester this year instead of a quarter. So I think I'm probably at some point going to have to maybe go in front of my school board and beg to keep it. But right now it's there. And I just cross my fingers every year that it's still on my schedule. But I know that there'll probably become a time where I have to get a little more involved and a little more vocal about the importance of it. Because really in the middle school, the only Holocaust education that's there is Anne Frank. And not that that's not wonderful, but we all know that if you just teach the Anne Frank play, that's not really Holocaust education. There's so much more that needs to be taught. So that's kind of my focus right now, finishing the MTF program and crossing my fingers that my class still exists next year.
And who is your mentor? Who's
Jamie Dannon.
Okay.
Yeah. She's great.
Just so the group knows, we've been very fortunate in Nebraska. We have a number of museum fellows, and even in the picture you showed, I saw Sandy Rankin was a part of it. She's the she's the hero to all of us in Nebraska. Are there other questions that the group has? Steve, please go ahead.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your presentation and what you're doing. Uh, First question I have is the Bellevue School District participating in our Week of Understanding?
We are not. I have taken kids to parts of it, but I have not done it fully yet. And I would love to do that. I would love to do that.
And we'll be in touch, but they're involved in number of our other programs too, just so you know.
Well, I think the Week of Understanding is quite critical, and I think we're early enough now that we could get them involved this coming year, 2024. So
Absolutely.
I think I'd urge some effort be made now to get that moving. I applaud your effort to get your kids to DC. I'd like to point out we have some wonderful local resources that aren't utilized. We have a Holocaust Memorial in Lincoln, Nebraska at the Wyuka Cemetery that I think it would be meaningful to take the kids to. And that you could have a field trip. You take field trips up to the Bach Museum. You could easily take a field trip to the Wyuka Cemetery and the memorial there. And potentially that could be combined with bringing the students to the Nebraska Memorial commemoration ceremony, which I believe occurs in April of each year.
This year it's May, because of the Jewish calendar. It's Sunday, May 5th.
May 5th.
In Lincoln. The program they may also find interesting is our community commemoration here that Wednesday night. And Katie, I'll make sure you get all information about that. Just so you know, Steve, they're also participating in the Reads program that we have. If Jane can give more information about that, but just an amazing program that we have coming up where there will be close to, I believe, 2,000 students participating in this community. And so we're thrilled to have their school involved in that.
I've expressed some concern to you that the attendance at the state commemoration ceremony isn't as good as we would like. And it would be really nice if we get these younger individuals to participate in that ceremony. And if we don't have good attendance at the ceremony, I'm not sure how long that the state capitol is going to allow us to continue this program. And I think it's a very important program. So perhaps a combined field trip to the Holocaust Memorial in the Wyuka Cemetery, along with a visit to the state ceremony, would be viable.
And I'll be happy to share all that with you, Katie.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
We have a question about, are you using any of the Echoes and Reflections materials in what you do?
Yeah, I've used some, and I just went to a webinar last week with Echoes and Reflections. I mostly use the museum resources in DC, but I have done some Echoes and Reflections as well.
That's wonderful. I mean, they're all wonderful and materials that we recommend in our when people come to us. Those are all things that are all within the framework. We just, for the group to know, Echoes and Reflections is a curriculum that was created a little over almost 20 years ago now, and it has continually developed. We were actually supposed to be doing a training for the Omaha Public Schools with someone from Echoes and Reflections coming in from Israel, actually, and the morning that they were supposed to, well, the evening that they were supposed to be leaving, that morning, the hostilities broke out. And so it's going to be rescheduled for next fall. But we're continuing doing training. And again, the museum programs are amazing. It just so, like, you know, what you're saying with Balfour as an example, they had a punt the first year, 2020, and did it virtually because they didn't want to not do it. And they, like Katie was saying, that they were only able to take about 25 people a year. Now there's a couple thousand actually that, and like I said, the outreach, and that it's all recorded now and people can watch it throughout the whole year. And it's been very, very successful. And where they can come back into the museum, they've decided to continue that training to be totally virtual because of the outreach that it can be.
And I think it's Belfour's really great because, you know, people are busy and it's summer and you don't have to watch it live. I always do because I just like to be immersed in it when it's happening. But I mean, I like to visit the chat rooms and talk to other people because there's Sandy Rankin always does a Nebraska, you know, Holocaust educators chat. But it's recorded and I think it's online for up to at least 6 months. So you don't have to.
Having, the program that I'm involved in, they're having us watch some of the recordings right now from last year. We have a couple more questions here from Marty. What inspired your interest in the Holocaust and laid the foundation for all that you have done and contributed? Was there one key?
I mean, I think I've always been interested in just human rights stories and just, you know, just teaching kids to be empathetic and kind. And I feel like for sure, just like the teachers in Whitwell, the Holocaust is such a foundation for teaching, like I said, what hatred can do when it goes unchecked. And then it's such a springboard for other things. You know, I don't try to lead my kids to current events, but they find the connections. And they even find the connections in their own life. You know, what do I do in my daily life that shows kindness and empathy for other people? And I just think that's so important. I know that, you know, in my Holocaust classroom is such a different feel than any other class I teach because they just come in and no matter where they were or what's happened in the day, they just settle and they just want to learn and they're in it and their maturity level goes up. And they come back, they send me emails afterwards. And I just feel, I feel inspired every day teaching the content because I think it makes such a difference. And I'm, you know, when I saw Schindler's List in 93, I mean, I was already reading and interested before that. And I think that catapulted a lot of people, in education as well. You know, you can say what you want about Oscar Schindler and all of that. I mean, you know, we talk about that in my classroom. You know, that was a Hollywood version, but it was quite the story. And I think that got general public interested. And my kids are so amazed. They go home and they talk about what I talk about in my classroom, and they know more than their parents, which is sad in a way, but I'm glad that they know. My kids inspire me every day just to keep going.
Thank you. Seth says, thank you for the important work. You are a real light to our community. I'll echo that. I'm curious about the engagement of most students in your class. Do you find any pushback on the education and are students typically engaged in your class compared to other classes that they may be in? I think you've answered part of that, but do you ever get any pushback, any questioning that way?
I don't get any pushback. In fact, I've never once had a parent question what I'm doing. In fact, I have the opposite. I have parents email me. I always email all the parents at the end of the semester and just say, you know, your kids have been fabulous. Thank you for, you know, your support of my class. But I get the opposite. I get emails thanking me for that. I even got a card from a kid today with a gift for the holidays and said, your Holocaust class was my favorite. And he's in 2 other of my classes. But I always joke that, you know, it's hard to be unkind in a Holocaust. Like that's just not what the kids who are different in the hallway in my room. It's a completely different feel in my Holocaust class. They really come in and they're ready and they're engaged and the bell rings and they're like, well, we're already done. We got to, and it's only a semester. So I already have kids going, can we come back next semester? Nope. Got to get a new group. Yeah, I don't have any issues in my room. Discipline, nothing. They're totally engaged the entire time, which is lovely because it's not always the case in other classes.
And I will say too that when they've come to the exhibits that we've done, the same thing. I mean, they're always wonderfully engaged, and it's a pleasure to have them. Linda commented that Holocaust education has come so far since she first took an educator's class trip, one-day trip to DC, that she taught Daniel's story to 8th graders, and she's inspired to see what you're doing, and that, I guess, using that too. I'm really, I think I knew they were redoing Daniel's story, but that's, and I think they're redoing the main exhibit too. I don't know if that's been done yet. They were, when I was there 4 years ago for an educator's program, they were just talking about that it was now that the main exhibit was going to be going through some evolution.
Yeah, and I think they're trying to change some of the language. You know, they're always going through and making sure that the language they use is appropriate and what they want to portray. So I think they're going through and they're making some tweaks to it.
It is very interesting to see the evolution actually of the museum too, as being wanting partnerships as opposed to when they originally came out and they were kind of just telling people what to teach or think or do. And now it's a real joint program together. It's actually wonderful. I'm a part of a different group through the museum, and it's just been really collaborative, and it's wonderful. Other
Yeah.
questions we may have? Katie, this was wonderful. You're amazing. We are honored to continue to work with you, and I know that moving forward we're going to have other opportunities. So that's going to be great. We're very much looking forward to the participation in the Reads program, participation that we're really great. We're excited about having the Anne Frank program come to you, and we'll see where we go next with what we're going to do next. You mentioned the Samuel Bach Museum. Next month, Alex, who is the curator, is going to be our presenter, and what she is going to be doing is showing a few pieces on the new exhibit that will be opening up, and we're going to dissect those pieces and see how Bach is used as a tool in Holocaust education. It's been as one door closes, another opens for IHE. Our ability now to be and partner and do things with the Bach Museum, the Learning Center, has been absolutely incredible. And we're actually now working on a teachers in service with the Harris Center, with Bach, with College of St. Mary, that will be this coming June. So we're very excited. I want to wish everybody a wonderful new year, and I look forward to seeing all of you, I hope, next month. And Katie, again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was my honor. Thank you.